Dolphin Tale. A Dolphin Tale in 3D. I mean, let's just say from the beginning, didn't need to be in 3D. There was some CGI stuff at the beginning that was in 3D. Beyond that, could have done without the 3D. So the story is described in the press as inspired by the amazing true story of a brave dolphin called Winter and the compassionate people who banded together to save her life. So the story is, remember we reviewed that movie a couple of weeks ago, Soul Surfer? About that, the young woman who lost her arm while surfing, who you had met, you'd interviewed her, right?
Yes, we had a few years before.
And the story was, what I was trying to say about the film was, although the film itself, is pretty schmaltzy and does everything very much as you'd expect it to, the story is pretty extraordinary, and there was a joy in watching that story just because it was a story about somebody overcoming great hardship and being really brave and doing good stuff, and the film was put together in a pretty solid way so that all the schmaltz was fine. So in the case of this Dolphin Tale, there is a similar arc to the review, which is it's inspired by a true story. Story is at the beginning there is a dolphin who is washed up on shore, tail is trapped in nets. Dolphin loses its tail. Dolphin then shows plucky reserve and manages to survive, which is unusual. But it turns out that without a tail, the dolphin's spine will not work properly. So a whole bunch of people become involved in helping the dolphin to use a prosthetic tail. And meanwhile, around the dolphin are a bunch of people whose lives are affected by one of them, played by Morgan Freeman, who is a guy who's working in prosthetics for people who've been injured in combat. One of them is a young boy who is sort of very dissolute because one of his relatives has gone off to combat and is feeling that nothing in the world is very important until he sees something in the dolphin that connects with him. Here's a clip.
How was school?
Fine.
Interesting. Because Mr. Doyle called and said you have not been there all week. Saw your wear on... What is that stench? Oh. Have you been fishing? Get back in there.
Fine. But I'm not going back to school tomorrow.
We're not discussing it. Now get back in there and wash up some more.
But Winter needs me. And if I stop now...
I am not asking you. You are going to school tomorrow, and that is it. Period. What?
I didn't say anything.
No. Come on, Max, what?
It's just hard to remember the last time Sawyer was excited about something.
Which, crucially, is the centre of the story. That actually, through this tale of of an animal referred to repeatedly by Morgan Freeman as a fish, but of course, being a dolphin, actually a mammal. But that's a different thing. But a mammal says struggling against the strange circumstances, actually inspiring everybody around the seeing the dolphin find its way back to health, and it ends up with a montage of the real life dolphin. And which is very much, because if you remember, Soul Surfer ends up with real footage, as if you say, if you didn't believe any of this story happened, here is the real footage of this girl actually doing this incredible stuff and coming back and then becoming a champion surfer. In the case of this, it is the footage of the scenes that you have seen played out in the movie of the rescue and of the using the prosthetic and of people being inspired by that. And it's one of those funny things when you watch the film and you go, well, yes, it is very schmaltz. I mean, the cast includes Harry Connick Jr., who I'm very glad to say looks like he's aging like the rest of us, which is very good.
Was there a time when he wasn't?
Well, there was. For ages, Harry Connick Jr. just looked like Frank Sinatra, didn't he? And then he looked exactly the same for ages and ages, but now he is starting to look like the rest of us. Time has moved on, and I'm very glad to see that. Ashley Judd, of course, very fine actress. Chris Christopherson, who does that. And
it was Nick Nolte, wasn't it?
Well, Chris Christopherson and Nick Nolte pretty much, indistinguishable. And then Morgan Freeman doing the benevolent Morgan Freeman turn. Is there anybody in cinema more benevolent and avuncular than Morgan Freeman? He's
sort of godlike.
Well, he has played God,
yes,
of course, and he's played the president, and he's played all those roles when you want somebody. He walks on the screen with a massive amount of trust and love. Could you any longer cast Morgan Freeman as a disreputable and unpleasant character who is horrible to everybody around him?
He could pull it off, though, couldn't he?
I think as an actor he could pull it off, but isn't there just so much goodwill towards Morgan Freeman nowadays that it would be impossible for any of you to just go, yeah, it's fine, it's only
We'd
Morgan
end up
Freeman.
on his side regardless.
Exactly. So anyway, in the case of Dolphin Tale, despite the fact that the 3D was irritating and there had no reason to be there whatsoever, and despite the fact that the thing is told in a schmaltzy, very, very in the same way that Real Steel is basically the film about robots hitting each other and does what it says in the packet, Dolphin Tale is that redemptive story about struggling against 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 very difficult odds and coming through, and everybody ending up in a big hug and learning life lessons. And I would be lying if I said it didn't move me and I wasn't charmed by it, and I didn't think actually that's a perfectly solid, good-hearted hour and a half, best part 2 hours worth of mid-range family entertainment with an interesting little thing at the end that says you may have thought we made all this stuff up, but here's the documentary footage to show you that we didn't.